Productivity tip number 2, task lists. We all have tasks we have to do. And what I've learned is that we don't have to have a task list that's 1,000 tasks deep. In fact, that used to be the way I thought. I had to have every task on one list, and that I would go through and cross it off and add to it, and there'd always end up being hundreds, if not thousands of things that I thought I needed to be doing. So what did I do to change this? Well, I learned that we need to reduce our task list to not feel overwhelmed, but also how I did it was I split it out over 3 separate lists. So I want to share that with you a little bit here. First of all, your task list doesn't need to have 1,000 tasks on it. It just needs to have the next action for whatever you're doing. Not the next action and then the possible 4 actions down the road, not subtasks that you do for a task every day. And so, for example, I used to think about with my job as a claims adjuster, I would list every task that I would need to do to try to close a claim. The same goes for sales. Say you're a salesman and you're making cold calls. You don't need to list that you're going to make a phone call to company A, an email to company A, and a letter to company A. You just need to say, I'm making cold calls for company A. You know you're going to do those other steps, so don't add that in your list. Well, the other thing that you would do is you might list out having an actual sales appointment or meeting with that company before you even get a hold of them. You don't need to do that. If you have just next actions, it's going to take your list from having potentially 10 to 20 for one actual action to 1. And so that's how we do that. Now, the second part to this that I've learned is that you break it into 3 separate categories. You have a task list for your month, one for the week, and one for your current day. And the reason I do this is that you don't need to have maybe next week's tasks or deadlines on the list that you're currently working out of. And sometimes you won't need to have everything in one spot, but it's always good to review and plan ahead. So that's why you have one for the month. Now let me break it down real quick. The monthly task list is going to be kind of these long-term next actions, things you know you need to do for the current month, but you don't necessarily need to do them all right away. And so it's still a someday list, but it's a someday list that you know you're going to try to complete all these things for your current month. Now you should have only about 30 to 50 tasks on this list because again, these are next actions. And you want to make sure that, again, if they're deadlines or if they're things that you want to complete, that you're going to do them in this current month. Now the next list that I keep is the weekly list. So I take out of that monthly list and I will take the tasks that I want to get done in the current week from that monthly list and set deadlines, self-imposed deadlines for those. This list should only have 20 to 30 tasks on it at any time. And typically what you're going to do is you're going to set a due date on the day of the week that you're going to do it, whether it's making cold calls on Mondays, follow-up meetings on Thursdays, those sorts of things. So you're going to reduce that monthly list down in your weekly list, and the same goes for the daily list. The daily list is where you're doing only the tasks that you want to do on a specific day, whether it's a deadline task or it's something you want to get done on that day, and it should have no more than 10 tasks on it. Now again, that's not to say that you're going to make 10 cold calls or 20 cold calls, but you don't need to have on that list the call, the email, the letter. You just have to have on there that you're doing that one action, because I know it has 3 sub actions to it, but it's the one main goal that you're trying to get done. And so that's the reason why I split it out into 3 different lists and remove the subtasks, remove the future tasks that I don't even know I'm going to get to. And what I've done is I essentially have reduced 1,000 task list down to maybe 100 overall in the month. One last thought is that when you're using a task list like this, where you're using next actions, you want to make sure that if you unlock a new next action, you add that to your list, whether it's the monthly list or your weekly list, and then you divvy it out to the daily tasks you do the following days. And this is the basis of how I use everything, and it's helped me get more done and worry less. It's reduced my stress and the overwhelmed nature of a giant task list. I hope you enjoyed today's productivity tip. If you want to learn more, there's going to be a link to my blog and an article that I wrote more about this. And also, you can find it in my book, Productivity Success. It's on Amazon. I'll put a link in the comments as well. Thanks so much, and you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next Monday.